Hey everybody, welcome to Comics with Bueller. As you can see, I am not Bueller, but this is the 133rd episode of the brand new Coffee and Comics Show. As you can see, Bueller's not here. I'm here, your host, Bullseye Bob. Normally I sit on that side of the podium, but today we have a very special guest with us. We have Jen from Comics Will Break Your Heart. Jen, how you doing?
I'm doing very well. Thank you so much for having me today. I don't know if I can fill Bob's shoes, but...
Well, I'm on the other side trying to fill the other guy's shoes,
yeah.
so...
How does it feel being in Bueller's shoes?
I don't know yet. I'm still getting used to it. The seat's kind of different, you know. I don't know how he sits over here. You know, he's got a bigger butt than I do, I think is what it is. So we'll have to see. But as you know, we always start with the coffee that we're drinking, and the coffee is always brought to you by Mocha Express. If you're ever in town, let us know that you're going to be here. Mocha Express is the official coffee house of the Comics with Bueller channel, and let us know you'll be here, and coffee's on us. So, Jen, what are you drinking today?
So I got the Bueller. This is actually my first time trying Mocha Express, so pretty excited. And from what I understand, the Bueller has peanut butter. It's peanut butter flavored.
That's right. It's a peanut butter mocha.
Peanut butter mocha. Excellent.
You
Very
like that?
peanut buttery, very creamy, like a hint of chocolate. I dig it a lot.
Mocha Express always does great coffee. Me, I'm having my normal mainstay, which is a cold brew with some vanilla, sugar-free vanilla sweetener inside of it. And as always, it's tasty. All right, so we're going to give you a quick rundown of the show today. And let me put my eyes on here. So basically, we're going to do announcements and thank yous. Then we'll go to our first five, which is brought to you by Bird City Comics. Then we'll get into our topic for the day, which is brought to you by Black Box Comics. And the topic this week is what movie or TV property would you want to see adapted into a comic book, or vice versa. I think Bueller put out there also that it was gonna, you could do it the other way as well. What comic book would you want to see adapted into a movie? So we know everybody knows that question. We get it quite a bit, but I'm excited about this topic.
Yeah.
And so next we have our final five, which is also brought to you by Bird City Comics. Then we have Robbie's Pick of the Week, which is a mainstay of the show. We have our Was It Good, brought to you by Comics on Coffee. And then we have Random Thoughts by our Patreon members. So we're going to start off with our announcements and our thank yous. And let's go ahead and thank our newest Patreon members. As you know, you can join our Patreon. It's $3.99 per month, the price of a brand new comic book. All right, so our newest Patreon member is Brandon A. Thank you very much, Brandon, for joining up. And then also I wanted to give a thank you to our only super chat last week, which is from our good buddy, the Rogue Trader. Thank you very much, Eric. And so thank you guys very much for doing all that you do for the show. We couldn't do it without you. So next we have our announcements. The only announcement that we really have this week is that we're all going to Rose City Comic Con. It's going to be amazing, both myself and Bueller. Jen's going to be there with a host of other people. Jen, are you excited about Rose City?
I really am, because this is the first convention I've been to in about 3 years. So, and the first one that I've been to on the West Coast, all the other ones that I've been to are on the East Coast. So I'm really excited to see how this one's different, a whole, batch of different creators that are going to be there. So I'm really excited. And I'm really excited to meet some folks who I've only met digitally.
Right.
So I'm really excited to see some of the people who are actually going to be there that I've never met in person before.
It's going to be a lot of fun. I mean, like you just said, there's going to be so many people that are coming that we only know like through chats and things like that. People who watch the show that have become really good friends. And I'm really excited about that. And so this is your first time going to Rose City. What Comic Cons have you been to on the East Coast?
The Comic Cons that I'm used to on the East Coast are MegaCon in Orlando, as well as Tampa Bay Comic Con, SuperCon in Miami, a couple of conventions in North Florida like Infinity Con. I don't know if they do that one any longer. And my favorite East Coast comic convention is Heroes Con in Charlotte, North Carolina. Yeah, that one's probably hands down my favorite convention I've ever been to. Awesome
stuff. Well, we're happy to have you here for Rose City Comic Con. We really love it, and glad that it's back. So we're going to go ahead and move on to our first five, brought to you by Bird City Comics. You can go to their website, enter the code Bueller, and save 10%. By the way, there will be links to all of these different sponsors down in the description of the video. And so, Jen, why don't you go ahead and start us off with our first five?
I would love to. A lot of these are kind of random things that need to be filed away and organized. So hopefully I'll get to organize these soon. But I've got this Star Wars. I just liked it because it had a pretty Princess Leia cover.
Nice.
I also got this Boris Karloff.
Boris Karloff. That's a name I haven't heard for a while.
Yeah. Also Phantom on the Scan #5 that came out this week. So that series just ended.
Very
and then
cool.
This one's from several months ago, but The Immortal Hulk Time of Monsters #1. And then I picked up an extra copy of Nice House on the Lake #1.
So that was a nice first 5. I'm going to get mine here in just a second. As you know, Mrs. Bullseye is in the studio today. And when it comes to filing books and stuff, I got tons of stuff that is unfiled. So disorganized with my comics, and I need to take just a couple of days, maybe a weekend, and just take care of them.
Yeah.
All right, but I'm going to go ahead and get into my first 5. And I brought a bunch of Clayton Crane books. These are covers done by him. And the first one is Justice League Dark. And then this is another one of his Justice League Dark covers. And then also another Justice League Dark with his Swamp Thing, which is pretty cool. And then we have his cover for Venom 21, which is one of my favorites. And then Symbiote Spider-Man #1. I've always loved that cover with Mysterio on it. So there's my first 5, brought to you by Bird City Comics. Of course, go to the website, enter the code Bueller and get 10% off. And they're an amazing company over there at Bird City. They do provide a lot of stuff for us over here. But that 10% code goes on for as long as we're partners on the show. It's good stuff. So let's go ahead and get into our topic. And of course, our topic this week is brought to you by Black Box Comics. You can go to their website, enter the code Bueller10 and get 10% off of your purchase. And of course, this topic this week is what movie or TV show would you like to see, or property, would you like to see adapted into a comic book? And you can go vice versa as well. I know a number of people did. We got a lot of comments, and I'm really excited to get into this one. And so, Jen, you are up first.
Okay, so the first comment that I have here is from Jonathan Baker. Jonathan Baker says, I would absolutely love to see Saga. I would prefer the comic to wrap up first so the show wouldn't have to jump over the comic, but definitely Saga.
Absolutely.
I agree. That is one of my absolute favorite series in the world. When I think about what property I would love to see as a movie or TV show, I think it would be better as a TV show. I think Saga's it. I think we're waiting on, that's an incredibly hard property to do because it's really fantastical, lots of like science fiction themes in it. So I think that would be like the one that I would think of. So Jonathan, I definitely agree, and we're on year 3 of a Saga hiatus.
Yeah, I mean, from what I understand, it was supposed to relaunch this year, and I haven't heard anything.
Yeah.
But it was just one of those comments because I got to pick the comments this time. As I was going through them, as soon as I saw that there was a cool Saga, I knew somebody would bring up Saga, and actually that was brought up quite a bit inside of the comments, and so I knew that I had to pick that one for you. And but I would love to see Saga done. I think you're right. It would need to be done in long form storytelling, so a TV series would do much better. I think if you tried to do a movie, you'd have to bring the scope down to just one thing and maybe tell a story just in that would get rid of the full like massive, I mean, just unbelievable world that Brian K. Vaughan has made. And so that's one that definitely a long form storytelling would do it justice, I think.
Yeah, I would also hate to see Saga be ruined by the same thing that I think happened to Game of Thrones, where the TV show jumped ahead of the books because we're still waiting on the next book in the Game of Thrones series.
Right.
So I really hope that I would love to see a Saga show. Saga needs to come back. For sure.
Well, I really hope that Brian K. Vaughan has already written it all out, right? Instead of George Martin, who took years hiatus because he was doing so many other things. But we'll see what happens. All right, Jen, you got the next one.
Okay, the next one comes from, and I'm probably going to butcher this name, but Quahu Trilokcha.
That's good enough.
Okay. Live action miniseries for The Many Deaths of Layla Starr. The writing alone is amazing and lends itself perfectly into an episode format with Layla Starr encountering Darius each episode. I agree. And that's probably my favorite book of the year, The Many Deaths of Layla Starr. It ended this week. But I agree. Ramvi's writing, I think that book would lend itself so well to a episodic. So maybe you see, in different stages of life. And I think that even though Layla Starr was only 5 issues, I could see it being like a 10-issue series and maybe getting a little bit more into it. So excellent choice there.
Absolutely. I think it's primed to be made into a TV or movie property. I would much rather see it done into a series where you have it be episodic. I definitely love Ramvi's writing. Now, I think the thing that intrigues me on this is from what perspective do you actually write this one, or do the TV adaptation, and doing it from the different perspective than they do inside of the comic book, I think would lend to it being filled out even more. So, great pick. I really love that one. All right, so Jen, you got the next one.
Whew. Three in a row. This one is also from Jonathan Baker. I would like to see American Horror Story do a comic.
That right there is, I haven't seen the whole American Horror Story series, but that's one because I love anthologies. I would love to see an anthology series. So each comic book, a full series, maybe a 5 to 10 issue arc for each story adapted into a comic book. But I'd like to see new stories, right? And but I thought that one was completely prime. I'm sure you loved it. You love horror, so.
I do love horror, but I have tried to get into American Horror Story. Haven't really been able to find the one, because each season is a little bit different. I haven't been able to find the one that really gets me, the witches season. I did like that one, but I always wanted American Horror Story to push the bounds of horror a little bit more. Like I wanted it to maybe be a little bit more horrific, maybe a little bit scarier. Maybe a comic book could go darker, and that's what I wanted from American Horror Story.
Yeah. I think that they were pushing the envelope in other ways, which that's not my cup of tea. I think the very first season I really liked, and then the one that had the weird circus type act. I think that other than that, most of the seasons that I've gotten into, a couple episodes in, I let it go. Yeah. But I think that one is definitely prime to be made into a comic book series for sure. All right. Looks like, okay, I got the next one. No, actually, you do. You got the next one from Half Moon Picks.
I've got the next one. 4 in a row.
4.
Half Moon Picks says, comic to TV would have to be Ice Cream Man by Image Comics. I love those Twilight Zone, Tales from the Crypt, Black Mirror type shows. TV to comic would have to be Sliders, which I think someone did a limited story, but I would love to see the team leap into new worlds with new stories.
Now, I'm not familiar with Sliders as much as are you. I'm assuming it's kind of one of those where they're basically jumping into different timelines, which we've seen done a number of times. I think that's what it is. But Ice Cream Man being made into a TV or movie property, what do you think about that?
I love that, and especially when Ice Cream Man originally came out, it definitely had those Twilight Zone vibes, and even though there is a newer Twilight Zone series that's come out recently, I think that doing something like Ice Cream Man that's a little bit wackier, for lack of a better word. I think that Ice Cream Man is a little bit more out there and could be strange. I don't think that we would see something like that on maybe like a mainstream platform. Maybe something more like Amazon Prime could possibly do Ice Cream Man. That's what I'd like to see.
Yeah, the latest episodes of the Twilight Zone, I think they're still trying to do the same thing with that property, which is to try to either recreate something that Rod Serling already did, or to create new horror or weird type stories instead of just telling a good story. And the thing about Maxwell Prince, his writing, is that it's so relevant because it gets into things that we all think and go through, and he really plays on that and sucks you into the story that way, and then really brings that place of both apathy and despair there's many times I've read Ice Cream Man where I was completely creeped out and was like, oh man, that hit me hard. And I would love to see a TV property episodic like that with Maxwell Prince as the writer,
Yes.
right? Be made into a series. I think it'd be amazing.
I agree.
Absolutely. I know it was supposedly optioned, and they were going to be making a show on some platform that I've never heard about. Did you ever get to see anything from that?
Mm-mm.
Yeah, I don't think anything ever actually came out. But Ice Cream Man is one of those properties that I would just absolutely love to see.
Yeah.
Now, one of the things that we talked about on the phone is on some of these is what would your dream team be? You know, if you had a comic book or a movie made into a TV series and things like that. So that's one of the things I'd like to play upon inside of some of these comments as we go along here. Yeah. All right, I got the next one finally. Next one comes from Artistic Flavours. And this one I had to pick for myself because it's right up my alley. You guys have heard me talk about this many times. But he says, like a comic to movie would be Doctor Doom's solo series movie, which would be about his origin and would end with the climax of him battling Mephisto for the soul of his mother. TV to comic would have to be the Longmire series. Detective comic with a Western twist would be awesome. Thanks for the great content. So for me, I mean, I would love anything to be done with Doctor Doom. And that particular story, as many of you know, is one of my favorite things about that. That's what helped me to understand the motivation behind Doctor Doom. Yeah. Was the fact that every year, once a year, he goes and fights for the soul of his mother. And this guy goes to hell once a year. I mean, you face hell. No wonder he acts magnanimous towards everything else out there, because it's like minuscule compared to what he goes through. Mm-hmm. And so I've always loved the Doctor Doom character, and as much as I would love to see a movie based upon him, I would love to see that done. I just don't think we'll ever get it in my lifetime. But I've said that about a number of things that have come about. You know, mm-hmm. I mean, I ended up getting the even An Android Can Cry. They played upon that inside of the WandaVision series. Mm-hmm. So who knows? Yeah. Maybe we'll get it. But that would be like an absolute dream for me.
I think that whenever we think about these favorite characters that we have or these favorite properties that we have, it's like I want to see my favorite character on screen, but there's always a little bit of hesitation because there's so many ways that it can go wrong, right. And you don't want it to ruin it. Yeah. So I think that that's kind of this balance of like, I want to see this character, but you know, I want to see it done right. Absolutely.
And to date, let's just be honest, every Doctor Doom that they've done on TV or the big screen, they have not done right. Yep. So we're all waiting for that. You know, in the MCU, we have some things that are coming up that are prime for Doctor Doom to come back in. With the next Wakanda movie, they do have, we got inklings of possibly Namor being in there. I would love to see a Three Kingdom thing going on with Doctor Doom coming into the fray. Because as we know, that's happened in the comic books. So we'll see what happens. But the other thing that they talk about here is Longmire being made into a comic book. Did you ever see the series Longmire?
No.
I really enjoyed the series Longmire. Both Mrs. Bullseye and I watched every bit of it. It was good. From what I understand, it's not as good as the original books that they're adapted from. But I could definitely see that made into a comic. I think we have a deficit of Western comic books, right? There's been a couple that have come out here lately that have been really good, but I think a Longmire comic book would probably work.
Awesome.
Absolutely. All right, I got the next one. Next one comes from Simply Ian, and he says, I'd love to see Shadow Doctor as a movie. I think there's so much more to that story than was included in the books. Plus, would be great shift in perspective of the gangster genre. As for film to comic, I'd love to read a book set in the Mad Max universe that goes beyond just the films. Yeah. Pretty cool. Now, you've read Shadow Doctor, yeah?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, what do you think about his comment about that being made into a movie?
I agree, especially because we've seen like that gangster genre like is a pretty big genre. There's so many classic films, but I think that coming from that perspective is a very unique perspective considering the characters. And I think that in the like psychology of a gangster, it's really from an outsider perspective. The reason why a lot of these criminals are gangsters is because they have this unique outsider perspective, which the main character of Shadow Doctor does. And the storytelling, I would love to see this as a movie, and I think it could be done really well.
Absolutely. You know, a lot of times, you know, we hear about people wanting things to be adapted into a movie, and you know, a lot of times, you know, you don't want a straight adaptation. You've already seen what, you know, what you've seen inside of the comic book. You want it to go beyond that. Some people like that, some people don't. Some people just want exactly what they've already got, right? In this particular case, I would love to see, especially how they portrayed it inside of this book, where it's being told by the grandson who's relaying a story of his father talking to his grandfather on his deathbed. I thought that perspective was amazing. I think that would work so well, but I'd like to definitely see the story evolve from there. I'd like to see Al Capone's perspective on this as well. But I think that Shadow Doctor, Bueller and I have talked about this many times in the show. This is one of the best comic books that have come out this year.
I agree.
And I would absolutely love to see that made into it, for sure. Let's see here. Oh, and he also talks about the Mad Max universe.
Yeah.
You know, I love the last one that they did, Fury Road.
Yeah.
I can't think of the name of the director who does. He's getting up there in age, but you know, he plans on doing more of these movies that are not Mad Max centric, and I think the next one is going to be based upon Furiosa, which
Furiosa.
can't wait,
Yeah.
which would be amazing. So I think we got those coming, which would be really cool.
And there is actually a comic book set in that universe that's from more of the storytelling from not just Imperator Furiosa, but the I forget the young women, their name as well. It comes from their perspective. I read a little bit of it. I didn't love it, but I would love to see maybe something more, especially if it ties into whatever new movie's coming out with Imperator Furiosa.
Absolutely. I'd like to see more comics that connected to the movies, telling different stories, but be connected, for sure. All right, let's see. Next one comes from Ronald Honow. He says, the HBO original show The Wire turned into a comic book. Best show ever. Images, big man plans, bring that to the screen. Good stuff. Now, I picked this one because I love The Wire. Have you ever watched The Wire?
I haven't, and I've heard so many good things about it, but it's almost overwhelming, and maybe, I don't know, I get a little bit scared thinking about watching The Wire because I know it's so good, and I don't want to break a lot of people's hearts if I don't like it.
Oh, you know, you like what you like. But I would definitely say, just watch the first season.
Okay.
Because each season is kind of a story unto itself, and even though they're connected, you don't necessarily have to see the previous stuff to get into it, because they're told from different areas. But that first season was a masterpiece, an absolute masterpiece. It's gritty. I could see that adapted into a comic book by Ed Brubaker and Phillips. I would love to see that team on something like that. There's some characters inside of that show that I would love to see made into their own comic book. Like, there's a character named Bunk, who's just kind of like the partner of one of the main characters. Every time he's on screen, you love Bunk. And so I'd love to see a Bunk comic book. But definitely I would recommend, you know, forget about what everybody else thinks. Definitely watch that first season. I think you'll love it. And if you don't, that's okay too.
I'll come yelling at you.
All right.
You told me I'd like it. Just kidding.
There we go. All right, Jen, you got the next one.
This one comes from Aussie Shepherd, and they say, other than a live action X-Men Origins television show, I'd love to see a comic book made from the TV show The Prodigal Son. It's about a man who has a father who is a serial killer, and he is a criminal investigator.
Now, have you seen this series?
I have not. It sounds like Dexter to me in a way, but that's me not knowing anything about it.
That's true. And that's, you know, I have not seen the series either. But that concept, the way he wrote it out there, really appeals to me. I love the Dexter series. By the way, we're getting more episodes of Dexter this year.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. I think November, Showtime has the continuation. Go watch the trailers.
Okay.
I mean, my wife and I are huge Dexter fans. And so we can't wait to see more episodes. But when I read the description of what this is, a serial killer who's, you know, a criminal investigator whose father is a serial killer, that kind of turns it the back way, the Dexter story. I would love to see that. I would love to see that not only as a show, so I'm going to check it out now, but I'd love to see something like that adapted into a comic book as well, for sure. Yeah. All right, Jen, you got the next one.
The next one comes from Brandon Allard. I don't think this will be a popular choice. I love these. But I would like a Lost comic. I found the show's writing top-notch right up until the lousy ending. Maybe with a second try, on paper, it would end better. As for going the other direction, I was going to suggest Noctera as a show or movie, but that was just confirmed as happening today. So I'll vote Scumbag as well, but only if it isn't toned down. Okay, yeah.
There were a lot of Scumbag comic comments inside of here, and I don't think it was just because of Bueller, but they're definitely in there. So, did you watch the series Lost?
I did. When it was coming out, I think that that was one of the last shows that I remember watching on like a week-to-week basis, where it's, I mean, you know, on like cable television, like obviously some other shows as well, but I remember that one being one that I was very in tuned to at the time, and then fell off of it and then went back and watched it. And as soon as I read this comment, I was like, yes, I now need a comic book that explains everything that didn't go back and get explained. Yeah.
I think the last issue of Nice House on the Lake had some Lost vibes.
Yeah.
You know, and so as soon as I started, he's exploring the island, and there's like all those different like contraption statues and stuff like that, and the mystery behind it. I just was getting a huge Lost feeling. So we may have kind of an adaptation already going on with Nice House on the Lake. But I really enjoyed the Lost series. There's so much that was left for explanation, for sure. I think there are web pages dedicated to all the different things that they didn't explain. But I think a comic book, I agree, you know, I don't know if a full adaptation, but at least something that explains those things a little bit better, I think would be amazing.
I would love to see Jonathan Hickman write something like that, because Jonathan Hickman does those really cool, like I call it the Hickman dump, where he just dumps all the information on you and gives you a timeline and gives you a backstory and a family tree. That's what I need. I need a Jonathan Hickman like infographic.
Absolutely,
for Lost.
with all the bells and whistles, the graphs and everything.
Yep.
That's what he does. That would be amazing. Absolutely, that's a good pull there, Jen. Okay, so and then he talks about Noctera being made. I know that is being made into a show, or is it a movie? I don't remember, but it has definitely been optioned. Have you been on the Noctera series?
I read the first issue, and I think that one came out the same week or the same time as Geiger did, and the two seemed very interchangeable to me, and I didn't love the series on the first issue, so I dropped it. I didn't pick up any more issues, but I hear so many good things about it.
Yeah.
I did go ahead and pre-order the trade, so that should become the first arc, so I am excited to read that, and pretty interested to see what they can do with the show, because maybe they can flesh out a couple of the characters a little bit better.
For sure. That's definitely one that I think I read the first 4 issues, and I'm behind on the rest, so I have to go back and read those. But I definitely, once I got, I think, to the 3rd issue, there's some things that broke open that I really enjoyed about it. And you do mention Geiger. Geiger, that's just an amazing series. Okay. I would love to see it made into, I think it's primed to be made into a TV series or a movie. I feel like we've kind of seen it before, though.
Yeah.
But I don't know if any more comments mention Geiger in there, but that is actually worth a mention anyway. All right, and so let's see. I guess I got the next one. Next one comes from Ghost Rider. And he says, top 3 movies best suited for a comic book: Raising Arizona, River's Edge, and Altered States. Then he's got TV series 3: Lost, Prison Break, and Reservation Dogs. Comic book optioned for movies, top 3: The Plot, Family Tree, and Undiscovered Country. Comic book much needed TV series: Proctor Valley Road, Strange Academy, and Philadelphia. To the writers and executives who watch this, use our ideas. You're welcome.
Yeah, you're welcome.
So he mentions a number of things inside of this comment. The first is his TV choices, or from movies to TV, or movies to comic book, I should say. Raising Arizona, River's Edge, and Altered States. I think a Raising Arizona comic book would be amazing.
Yeah, that would be really fun. You know, when I think about some of these, I also think about the creative team behind it. Who do you think would be a good writer? I feel like that would be essential. Like, who would be writing Raising Arizona?
I think Karen Gillan would be a perfect writer for
Okay,
that because
yeah.
Karen Gillan can go out there, and I love if you. What was the name of the one? There's one that he just wrote in the last year that was completely wacky, and it made me appreciate Karen Gillan so much more. I can't think of the name of it though. Anyway, I can't think of it right now, but that was his writing was so wacky on it. I think him doing a Raising Arizona type book would be amazing. So, but and then we got a couple more things that he talked about here. TV series Lost, which we've already talked about, Prison Break, and Reservation Dogs. Now, the Prison Break series, I did watch, but since both those main actors were on The Flash as these wacky characters, Mr. Cold and Heatwave, right? I don't know if I could watch Prison Break without seeing those type of things inside of there. And then, do you know what Reservation Dogs is?
It's, from what I understand, I believe that it's a new show that just came out that's done by Taika Waititi, who did the What We Do in the Shadows original movie, as well as Thor Ragnarok.
Right.
So I haven't seen that, but I really want to watch it because it looks good.
Now that I know that he is the one who's behind it,
I believe so, yeah.
Hands down, I would love to see it. I love everything that he does.
Same.
I've been a huge fan of his since we saw The Hunt for the Wilder People.
Yeah.
Which I absolutely loved.
So good. I believe he was supposed to do an Akira movie.
Oh my gosh.
And it was supposed to come out in 2020, but
you're losing out. That would be amazing.
That would be perfect.
Yeah, it would. Absolutely. All right, so let's see. The next one goes to... I got the next one. It comes from our good friend Eric Rigsby. And he says, Comics to Movie Scumbag. Ernie Ray Clementine to be played by Matthew McConaughey. And movie to comic Roadhouse. I think he was trying to play to Bueller's strengths here. Yeah. For sure. But we talked about Scumbag earlier, but you mentioned that if you did Scumbag, you'd have to have it with nothing held back, right?
Yeah, I actually didn't love Scumbag. I thought that it was a little bit too over the top, and there's some moments in there, especially there's a scene in the first issue where he defecates in the middle of a street. I don't know if the world is ready for that. I know that comic book fans, we like some weird stuff. I don't know if the rest of the world is ready for that.
Yeah, no. I mean, I'm just not. My apologies, but when I read the first comic book, I'm like, this one isn't for me. But we all know that Bueller loves it. Yeah. And there are a number of people who wanted to see this adapted into a movie or TV series. So there is an audience for it. Mm-hmm. And but again, it's just not my cup of tea. More power to everybody else who, to each his own. But then he also talks about movie to comic Roadhouse. Have you seen the movie Roadhouse?
Yes, yeah.
Classic. Mm-hmm. I think a movie not just about Patrick Swayze, but the guy that mentored him, Samuel Elliott, that's his name, right? Yeah. I'd love to see a comic about him and his exploits rather than. I think that would be a really cool one because you got a sense that there was more of a story there with him, and so I'd love to see something like that.
That would be one that I would actually like to be seen written by Ed Brubaker.
Yeah, exactly.
I think that would be like that really cool. I think
especially
if it goes a little bit grittier with the vibes, I would really like that.
He does that so well. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. For sure. That's a great pull. All right, Jen, you got the next one.
Okay. This one comes from AI. Mm-hmm. I keep thinking how bad we need a comic book about Bob fighting Robbie. I just picture Robbie telling Bob how Daredevil is the worst Marvel character and Kanto sucks before Bob hulks out and attacks. But then, just before he finishes Robbie off, Robbie smiles and blows vape smoke in Bob's face, rendering him unconscious. Bob wakes up in Robbie's secret lair with his eyes pried open, being forced to read Grog and Tarzan.
Gru and Tarzan.
Gru and Tarzan.
I had to put that in there because it was so outrageous. If anybody wants a comic book done, we got a story going on right here. Of course, that plays from our last week's show where somebody was basically asked who would win in a fight between Robbie and I. And so, anyway, great comic book, right?
Yeah. I would 100%. I pre-order, add to my pull list. I would get every variant cover. Done.
Eisner Award winner, baby.
Eisner Award winner.
Eisner Award winner. All right. And that right there is the last of our topic. Of course, our topic is brought to you by Black Box Comics. You can go to their website and enter the code Bueller10 and get 10% off. And of course, like I said, all of the links to these great companies are down in the description of the video. All right, we're going to go ahead and switch gears and get into Robbie's Pick of the Week.
Hey everybody, I'm Rockin' Robbie Billups. You're watching the all-new Coffee and Comic Show on Comics with Bueller, and my pick of the week is...
The Many Deaths of Layla Starr by Boom Studios, written by one of my favorite authors, Ram V, and Felipe Andrade on the artwork.
This is issue number 5, and I did not get a chance to read this week. I know that you have because it is part of your Was It Good, and so I'll be looking forward to hearing that. And but I mean, you know, one of the things that's happening is this is the last issue of The Many Deaths of Layla Starr. So what's Robbie gonna pick now?
What else is coming up by Ram V soon?
Right, exactly. We didn't even put a card to the side of the envelope last week. We just looked at each other and we knew what it would be. So there it is. But Robbie always does a great pick of the week. If you haven't been over to Robbie's channel, he does some of the best reviews in comics over at Pop Culture Philosophers. Definitely go check him out and give his channel a like and subscribe and show him all the love and tell him how much you know what his pick is going to be. All right. And with that, we are going to move on to our final 5 brought to you by Bird City Comics. And of course, if you go to Bird City Comics and enter the code Bueller at checkout, you'll get 10% off your purchase. And so, Jen, why don't you go ahead and show us your final 5?
Yeah. So I've got Ultra Mega number 1, published by Image Comic Books. Another one that came out this week. It's the variant cover for Demon Days.
Nice.
I've also got this pick, and I've got 2 different covers. The Lunar Ladies, published by Scout Comics. I've got 2 of the covers there. One of them is signed by Omar Morales.
Nice.
So thank you there. And another one, this one's published by Boombox, called Mamo. Really fun. And the last one I have is Killer Queens, issue number 1, by by Dark Horse Comics, published or written by David Boer, who did Kanto.
Absolutely. Still have not read that yet. I'm excited to get into it. I definitely told David that I would give him a non-biased review, and so definitely I have it.
You have it?
Yeah,
okay. I brought an extra copy.
I appreciate that.
Okay.
I just haven't had a chance to get into it yet, but that's a great final 5.
Yeah.
And,
I'm excited to see yours.
Yeah.
So I'll remove these.
There we go. Thank you. So this week I brought some Immortal Hulk that was not done by Alex Ross. And see, these are all alternate covers. And we have issue number 12. And some of these are creepy. Some of these are just really comic booky. Get issue number 5. I was going through my comics and didn't realize how many covers I actually did have of this that was not done by Alex Ross. Here's another copy of issue 5. I think this was a 3rd print. And then here's, I think this is 3rd print of issue number 1. And then the last one is, this is the 2nd or 3rd print of issue number 9. But they're all covers that were not done by Alex Ross. I thought I'd bring some alternate universe of Immortal Hulk. So there's our final 5, brought to you by Bird City Comics. Of course, you go to the website, enter Bueller at checkout, and you get 10% off your purchase. Thank you, Bird City Comics. All right, well, moving on, we're going to go to our Was It Good segment. And this one's brought to you by Comics on Coffee. Go to their website and enter the code Bueller at checkout. You get 15% off your purchase. Their coffee is amazing over there. Great to have them as a sponsor of the show. Have you tried their coffee?
I have. Not only did I order some coffee for myself several months ago, but I also got some coffee from Bueller the last time I was here. And I actually just went back and ordered 2 bags of the amaretto because it was my favorite.
Nice. Awesome stuff. Well, definitely go check out their website, and you get some a great discount off of their comics, off of their coffee. But we're going to go ahead and go into our Was It Good segment. And Jen, we're going to go with you first. And the first one that you have is The Many Deaths of Layla Starr by Boom Studios. This is issue number 5. And Jen, was it good?
This book was so good. The Many Deaths of Layla Starr, hands down my favorite book of the year. This was the last issue number 5. So kind of a bittersweet ending here. I really, really enjoyed it. There's a part of me that would love to see more from this universe. And I think that, there's always that, like, maybe they could, but otherwise it ended perfectly. It's perfect just the way it is.
Awesome. And so do you think he might be going into, continuing this in different ways? Or is this self-contained? 'Cause I haven't read the last issue yet.
This is definitely self-contained. Do I think that Rom V could do something? 100% hands down. I think that we could see the entire mythos of this, and I would buy every single issue of that. But yes, this ended perfectly.
Awesome. Are we seeing the next iteration of what Sandman evolves into?
Yes. I agree, and Rom V recently posted on Twitter that a lot of the influence for Layla Starr was partially Sandman, as well as the character Death from Sandman was a lot of the influence behind this. So I could definitely see you see that in this.
Awesome. Well, I look forward to reading that next issue. All right, your next one is Midnighter, annual for the 2021 year. Jen, was it good?
It was. I wasn't really sure how I was going to enjoy this. Haven't read a Midnighter comic book in a while, so it was really interesting to pick up the annual. And I think what really made this for me was the artwork by Michael Avon Oeming. I really, really enjoyed it. It was good.
Very good. I confess I've never actually read The Midnighter, and annuals normally don't pan out for me. So good to hear that it was a good issue.
I like that it's self-contained. So I don't think that you need to know too much. You maybe need to know a little bit about the character, but it was definitely a good kind of self-contained story.
Awesome. All right, your last one is from Dark Horse Comics, and it's The Worst Dudes, and this is issue number 3. Is that what it is?
Issue number 4.
Issue number 4. And Jen, was it good?
It was excellent. This book is such a wild and wacky ride. Aubrey Sitterson has this way of writing comics that are just really fun and dynamic and completely unexpected. Very raunchy. This is kind of an R-rated comic book, and it delivers on that.
Okay. Awesome stuff. Well, that's a great Was It Good segment on your side. And so now we're going to move on to my books, and let's go for it.
Excellent. So the first one here is Dark Ages by Marvel, new issue 1 that came out. And Bob, was it good?
Surprisingly, it was really good. I normally don't go in for any of the Marvel events. They never pan out for me. As a matter of fact, I usually stay away from them until they're over with to find out whether or not it's worth it. And this one, based upon the write-ups, I thought I'm going to give this one a shot. And I was pleasantly surprised. The artwork is amazing. I loved every single page of it. Most of the story is all set up. There's a piece of it that's kind of trite. I mean, it's like, we've had all of these different things happen in the Marvel Universe. They never saw this creature sitting in the middle of the earth, right? So that was kind of trite. But other than that, the book is all set up for where we're going. This creature has been sitting there for a long time, this great devourer. And when he finally does emerge, there's a few of our great comic book characters that were killed. And lo and behold, it creates this atmosphere with an electromagnetic pulse that it continues, that takes out all electronics on the face of the earth, and so now we're in the dark ages. And seeing some of the characterizations of what we're going to see in the next issue, like a steampunk Iron Man, I am so on board with this comic book. It's not even funny. I can't wait to see the next issue. I really hope it's not like other Marvel events where it lets me down, because I really enjoyed that first issue.
It really was a good first issue, and I credit a lot of that to Tom Taylor, who writes really fun stories. I wouldn't be reading Nightwing if it wasn't for Tom Taylor writing that, to be completely honest. And so same thing for me. Like, those events, sometimes they're good, sometimes not so much, but this one was really, really fun, and I enjoyed it as well.
I've really loved Tom Taylor's writing for a while now. I think the first time that I ever experienced him was a few years ago. He did a one-shot in Detective Comics, and it was just one story, self-contained, and it was emotional. It was amazing, and that's what turned me on. Of course, after that he did Deceased. I loved his Suicide Squad run, the only 9 issues. I was so mad when they took that down, but by doing that, we got Nightwing, so very happy about that. Love Tom Taylor's writing, and this is no different, and glad to see where it's going, for sure. Yeah. All right.
So the next one is a DC book, and it is Fear State Alpha. Bob, was it good?
It was all right. It definitely wasn't what I was hoping that it would be. I know Jorge Jimenez is doing the art on it, but it has a much different feel. I don't know if it's a different inker or a different color, but it's definitely not what I'm used to seeing on the pages, so that was kind of a little off-putting. It's still great artwork, don't get me wrong. But as far as the story goes, I know this is going to be this major event with the Scarecrow, but it seemed by the time I got to the end of the book, it just felt a little convoluted to me. And so it wasn't as concise as I was hoping it to be. It doesn't feel like a big event that I'm excited for at this particular point. But we'll see.
Yeah. I enjoyed this one. However, DC puts a guide in the back of all these other books that you need to pick up in order to read this. And that's what I'm a little bit worried about, because I'm probably not going to pick up all of those books. I did we get to see a lot of the Bat family in this, and we get like an appearance by Batwoman, who's one of my favorites. So I hope that more of those little snippets show up. I want to see more Batwoman, basically.
Yeah. No, I get you. That was one of the things about Joker War. There was a lot of tie-ins, and it just seems like they're doubling down, and there's like twice as many tie-ins on this one. So I'm not buying it. I'll probably stick with the main Fear State story. Because let's just face it, even with the Joker War, a lot of those tie-ins were so loosely based on what was actually going on, they didn't really matter. So that's kind of how I'm going to approach this one. We'll see how it goes. Yeah. And then my last one, we don't have the actual physical copy, but it was Firepower number 15.
Okay, so Firepower 15. Bob.
Yeah.
Was it good?
It was good. I really love Chris Samnee's artwork. Kirkman's writing is always good. I love the concept of the story. The issue that I have with Firepower, I keep wanting to put it down. And I keep picking it back up because I know it's one of the few martial arts comics that we have, and I love Samnee's artwork. But really, this is one of the first books that I've gotten onto where here we are on issue number 15, and I can't tell you the names of most of the characters that are inside of this book. They're forgettable. He hasn't really hooked me. And he keeps trying to build out the stories of these characters. And the only one that I really care about is the old guy that basically taught him in the very beginning. And so because of that, I got this kind of relationship with this book that half the time I want to put it down, but I keep picking it back up. But this was a good issue. It kind of dealt with some of the dynamics of his girlfriend that he had originally that was on the compound, that was kind of the love of his life. They find out she's alive because, he thought she was dead all this time. And now his wife is kind of dealing with the fact that she's come back into the picture, and she knows that was the love of his life. And, but now, she's not dead. How does that play out? And so there's all these, relational dynamics that are there. I enjoyed that part of it, but still I couldn't tell you what the wife's name is. Couldn't tell you what his son's name is, and he keeps trying to build out these characters, but he has not done it in such a way that's hooked me.
Okay.
So
I read the first volume, but I think it was technically the prequel to it. So I ended up reading that, but it didn't hook me enough to really keep picking it up. And I think that a lot of times with these Robert Kirkman stories, they do get a little bit drawn out, where maybe if this story was a limited series, or maybe if it was just one story arc, I would maybe like it more. But to that point, maybe you don't get to flesh out the characters like they should be fleshed out a little bit more. So
in this one, if he went that direction and just fleshed out the world that he's created a little bit more, like that prequel story, I think is still the best we've seen out of this series so far. And I'd like to see more of that world, but he keeps going back to trying to build out these characters, and I just don't care about them. I just don't. So there it goes. So there's our Was It Good segment, brought to you by Comics on Coffee. Of course, you go to their website, enter the code Bueller, and you get 15% off your purchase, which is great stuff. All right. So, Jen, we are moving on to near the end of the show. We're on our random thoughts. And so we have a couple of different things. We didn't watch kind of the same thing this week. We were hoping to have both watched the same movie, but that didn't happen. But you'd said that you watched something on the Disney Channel. What were you watching?
I did. I ended up watching the first half of the Cruella movie. So I did watch that. I wanted to check out Shang-Chi, but haven't gotten a chance to do that. But I did watch Cruella, and I enjoyed it. At least so far. I think that it's a really interesting origin story. I think it's something a little bit darker. I mean, obviously, Cruella is a little bit darker, a villain getting their own movie. I thought that it has done a good job so far, and the soundtrack has been really fun. It's set in the 60s and 70s, so we get a lot of that soundtrack, which I really enjoy. So I can't wait to finish it. Hopefully it ends up good.
Very good. That's awesome. I'm excited to see it. One of the things that both my wife and I really enjoy is a lot of the adaptations, that have come out from, different Disney properties. And, I wasn't as much of a fan of Maleficent, because they tried to give her the wicked treatment where she's not actually bad, she's good, and I get it. But to hear that Cruella kind of delves more into the darker side, that kind of excites me, because it's a villain, right?
Yeah. Yep.
And, it's cool to, kind of show them what their ulterior motives and things like that. But that's definitely one I'm definitely going to check out now, for sure. And so for me, I did get to watch Shang-Chi. They keep saying Shang-Chi. I still say Shang-Chi. And I'll just tell you that it was amazing. I loved every minute of it. I definitely think it's one of the better MCU movies. And for them to bring that character into the MCU the way that they did, I'm a huge martial arts fan. And especially when you start looking at martial arts as being a power set, like they've done technology, then they brought in magic with the whole Doctor Strange universe. And so now we get to play with, and then alien technology, and now we get to play with, well, how does martial arts fit into this? And when you see how the world can be manipulated and optioned and used with these great power by martial arts themselves, it was everything I wanted to see. Right, so I'm really glad that they portrayed it that way. They also didn't portray the 10 rings as being the main focus. The 10 rings are being they're being used by martial arts, which that's what I wanted to see. Yeah. So great characters, great movie. I can't wait to see how this interplays with the Avengers going forward. But I definitely highly recommend it. Good stuff.
That's excellent. I knew that I wanted to see it. As someone who is 100% invested into seeing whatever comic book movie ends up coming out, I knew that I was going to see this. I was probably going to wait until it is on Disney eventually, but after you gave such a good review, I'm like, I've got to go see this. So I'm probably going to see if I can check it out sometime, maybe Sunday evening. So we'll see. Yeah.
Definitely see it on the big screen. It's well worth it.
Yeah.
For sure. Okay, and then one other thing that I wanted to ask you, because there was a show with Damien, Sleepy Reader 666, when he was on here, and him and Bueller talked about Substacks. What's your take on Substacks? What do you think about it?
I've got a lot of thoughts about Substack. I want to preface any, any opinion I have about Substack with, I think that 100% comic book creators deserve a lot more credit than they get. I think they deserve to get paid a lot more than they currently do, especially creating these big properties for these big companies that rake in billions of dollars, and that they maybe get a couple $1,000s for these huge things that they create. So I'm all about creators getting what they're due, getting paid. And I think that platforms like Substack are a way for them to do this. But with the way that Substack is, I think that it ultimately can take comic books. It's not putting content into the hands of readers as easily and as accessible. I know that the way that the comic book industry is, it's pretty nuanced, and there are some publishers that say, hey, you upfront the cost of publishing a comic book, like those cost, and we'll go ahead and publish it and print it, and we'll negotiate how like your profits work and things like that. So I think that Substack could be a way for these creators to say, hey, I've got this cool idea. I'm gonna have my my fans, my loyal dedicated fans who are giving me money each week, they're going to fund some of it. They may get early access to it, and we'll maybe publish it on the back end with these other publishers later on. But I think that it's making comic books less accessible. And if I had one mission in life, it's making comic books more accessible for people. So these thoughts with it, on the one hand, I think creators need to get paid. Mm-hmm. And at the same time, I think that it's not putting comic books into people's hands, and especially in a print format. I'm a print reader. If this is all digital, I don't think that I'll be getting any.
Yeah. I would agree. I mean, I think my take on the whole thing is I hate it. I just hate it, period.
I hate it.
I mean, you're exactly right. I mean, I do agree with you that, comic artists, creators need to get paid more. Mm-hmm. I remember a story years ago that Neil Adams told about his interactions with a French comic book artist. And he was asked to maybe do a spread or a page for this French comic book company. And they asked him, how much would you charge? And he's used to getting $250 a page at the time. And so he thought he'd shoot high, and he says $400 per page. And they just laughed at him because their comic book artists over there were getting $3,000 to $7,000 per page. Mm. And so it just showed the perspective. Here's one of the greatest comic artists of our time, especially back then. And they laughed at him because he was making less than $400 or less per page. And so our creators have needed to getting paid a lot more for a long time. I agree with you on that. Going down this route, I can see as a creator that $40,000 paycheck is, hey man, that's in my pocket. I got a platform to put my stuff on there. Mm-hmm. I can see how that's appealing. But when you have a different platform for every single creator where you're going to pay a monthly fee for each one of those creators, now you're talking a bunch of crap. Mm-hmm. And I won't do it. I mean, you have the streaming wars happening right now where all these different streaming services are vying for our attention. And when you buy a streaming service, you're not getting just one movie from one different company. You're getting this whole volume of stuff to choose from, and that's what you're making your decision on. And what you're asking me to do is pay the same amount of money for Chip Zdarsky, and I'm just going to pull that because he's one of my favorites, right?
Yeah.
Just for Chip Zdarsky, and maybe he's going to put out how many comics per month? Maybe one, maybe two. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to pay the same amount of money that I would pay for a streaming service just to see him. And then I also got to pay the same thing for James Tynion. I got to pay the same. I'm not doing it.
Yeah.
And so I think it's crap. I hate it.
It's funny that you bring up Chip Zdarsky, because I had seen a lot of other creators join Substack, and Chip Zdarsky said that he was going to bring back one of my favorite properties that only got one volume, and that's Kaptara. And so I saw that Chip Zdarsky was going to possibly put Kaptara on Substack, and I'm like, well, there we go. That's the one thing that I'm like, maybe I will actually go on to Substack because I want Kaptara back from Chip Zdarsky. But if it's not in print format, I'm probably not going to read it. It's just going to end up digitally saved on a device somewhere, or end up in an email, and it's just going to be part of an ever growing backlog that I'll never get to.
Yeah, I would agree. Well, that's our random thoughts, and thank you very much. Those are brought to you by our Patreon members, and of course, our Patreon is $3.99 a month, and if you that's the price of a brand new comic book. If you think we're worth the price of a brand new comic book, join our Patreon. But we want to thank all of our Patreon members for all that they do. It keeps the lights on and the wheels rolling, right? There we go. Well, that's pretty much the show today. I did want to say that in our topic section, we didn't get to maybe what our picks are. What comic book or what TV or movie property would you like to see made into a comic book?
You know, when I think about this, and I think most of the picks that everyone else has mentioned, I think that we end up picking our favorites, or the ones that are very beloved to us. Mm-hmm. And one of the movies that I was really excited about, or that is one of my favorite movies that I would really love seeing adapted into comic book form, is The Fifth Element. When I think about movies and TV shows adapted into comic books, I think being on the page, you can do so much more than maybe a camera lens can do, or however that gets done. I think that you can go into these really big worlds, and I would love to see The Fifth Element is such a dynamic story that I really think that getting like a backstory or something with that mythology and that world, would love to see Fifth Element.
I think I already know your answer, but who would be your dream team creating that?
Taika Waititi, 100%. I would love to see him do this, especially after seeing Thor Ragnarok. Sorry, you were talking about creative team.
It's okay.
Yeah.
Either way is fine. Either way is fine.
So Taika Waititi, I think, should write it. No, I'm just kidding. So I think I would say Rom V, 100% writing it would be fantastic. I also, I was recently thinking about Southern Cross, which is a comic book written and art done by Becky Cloonan. So I'd really love to see Becky Cloonan do the artwork for a Fifth Element comic book. So,
nice.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I've given it a lot of thought. I wanted to maybe go with all these different, ones that are my favorites. Mm-hmm. But recently, my wife and I both watched the entire series of Breaking Bad, just because she had never seen it before. Mm-hmm. So I'm glad she finally got a chance to see it. And I was thinking the other day, how cool would it be if we got the further adventures of Badger and Skinny Pete, done by Chip Zdarsky and Matt Fraction. I think that comic book would be a must.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. The wackiness of it. And can you just think of the variant covers that those two would do?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I would love it. I think, they're the best homies you could ever have. Mm-hmm. And so to put them in a comic book and watch them progress, I think it'd be great.
For sure.
Well, that's our show. Jen, it was so good to be up here with you for the first time hosting without Bueller here.
Yeah.
And you did a fantastic job. Thank you for being up here with me.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me here. Whenever I do things for the first time, I'm like, oh man, I'm never getting invited back here again. So I want to say thank you to Bueller for having me over here again. And it was really nice meeting you in person for the first time, finally. Mm-hmm. So that was really great. And thank you for hanging out and talking comics.
Absolutely. And I also want to thank Bueller for giving me the opportunity to host the big show. And of course, I could never fill his shoes. People call us the dream team and all that, but really it's Bueller who makes all this work. And so thank you very much, my friend, for allowing me the opportunity. Before we go, Jen, why don't you tell them what you got going on your channel?
So on my channel, Comics Will Break Your Heart, I do a weekly Sunday show with my friend Mars, that comic girl, and we talk a lot about the books that we're reading, the shows that we're watching. We do get a little bit wacky. We do get a little bit zany on our show. We kind of wilding out over there. But that's every Sunday, not this upcoming Sunday because of Rose City Comic Con, which I'm really excited about. So you can see me there. I'll probably be trying to scrounge through some back issue hunting I haven't been able to do for 3 years. So we'll see.
There we go. Awesome stuff. Again, thank you very much for being on. It's been an awesome time just being here with you. My channel, of course, is Everything Comics. Haven't been putting out very much lately, but I do have plans going forward, and so stay tuned for that. But thank you guys very much for the support. Again, remember, there's no show next week because we're all going to be at Rose City Comic Con. You might have, updates on our Instagram and stuff like that. And Bueller may put something out. We don't know. But definitely remember that there's no brand new Coffee and Comic show next week. But that's it for the show today, guys. Thank you very much for tuning in. And you know how we end this all the time, right? Don't forget to like and subscribe. You know what to do. We'll see you next time. Bye.